Hi, this is the Thursday evening tropical tidbit for August 29th. As always, the thoughts here are mine alone, and in making decisions regarding Hurricane Dorian, consult your local sources of information and the National Hurricane Center for the best information pertinent to where you live. I'm only going to be talking about the big picture here and some of the sweeping possibilities, but nothing local to where you specifically are. This is Hurricane Dorian in the southwest Atlantic, moving north-northwestward right now, and again expected to turn toward the west during the next couple of days and move toward Florida by the weekend. If we take a closer look at the storm today, we'll see that we've had a pretty good inner core trying to develop, but the eye remains cloud-filled, and last night it tried to make a run at strengthening, but ingested a little bit of dry air out of the south, and that disrupted the forming eye wall. It was rather tiny at the time. It's a little bit larger now. The recon plane's in there and found about a 15-mile diameter eye, and it is trying to reform, and we've seen some intensification as well. The plane went through, found the center in here with a pressure of about 978, 979 millibars and winds over 90 miles per hour estimated at the surface. And this is a stronger storm than earlier in the day, and a strengthening trend has likely resumed and is likely to continue. If we look at the water vapor loop here, we'll see that again, a little bit of dry air on the south side shown in the darker grays is getting pushed in by some light southerly shear below the outflow layer. The cirrus on the south side are expanding outward a little bit, but there's a little bit of southerly flow underneath of that layer, which is pushing on the storm a little bit and forcing a little bit of that dry air in. Again, that caused disruption last night, but the storm seems to be recovering now and seems to be resuming intensification, and we can expect that to basically continue consistently throughout tonight and tomorrow. At this point, conditions are favorable enough that the storm will likely continue intensifying with only minor disruptions from time to time. Now, as this pinwheels toward the left, we see that this upper low is weakening to its west, and it is going to impart less shear as the storm moves more toward the west. The flow around this upper low will then become aligned with the direction the storm is moving, and shear will abate. What little there is now will disappear, and the storm will be under a fairly light shear environment. Now, there is another type of shear that may replace it. If we look at the GFS upper level wind forecast for Sunday morning, the storm is forecast to be just east of the northern Bahamas here, and we can see that there's a big high at 250 millibars showing up in here. This is slightly different than the 500 millibar high, which is centered to its north, but if you look even higher up in the atmosphere, you'll find this one centered over northern Florida. There's northeastern flow here moving over the hurricane, and if the hurricane is moving toward the west-northwest, these two are in a little bit of a different direction, and there could be some shear here out of the northeast. That's one potential thing that could disrupt Dorian slightly on its approach to Florida. However, this flow is fairly light and not forecast to be fully disruptive, and the storm is expected to intensify to perhaps a great degree on its way toward Florida and the northern Bahamas, unfortunately. Now, we've had a little bit of some changes in the models. We've talked over the last few days about how uncertainty has remained during the approach to the mainland U.S., and things can change, and here's some of those changes. This is the GFS. This is the last 9 runs, all valid 12Z Sunday, so 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday morning. Every frame here is a different model run. The last 9 or so used to have it up here east of Daytona Beach. It has since now adjusted and now has the storm forecast to be east of Great Abaco by this time. And this is a slower moving storm. That's been one of the trends on the models today, and since last night has been a slower moving storm on approach. And this matters for a variety of reasons. Not only could it delay the landfall time beyond the weekend and perhaps into Labor Day or even beyond, but it also allows what's going on to its north to evolve before the hurricane gets there. So again, we've been talking about this ridge to the north of the storm, and we can see this on the European for Sunday morning, showing the storm in a similar location to the GFS, and we have this ridge to the north which has clockwise flow around it, trying to force the hurricane into Florida. Now, the fact that the storm is trending slower on these models means that perhaps this little trough over the Midwest trying to weaken this western flank of the ridge may have more time to do so. So if we go out to Monday morning, we can see this little trough passing through New England, and we have our big high over the Rockies, and we have our little ridge over the southwest Atlantic, but there's this little break in between, and it may allow the hurricane to start sneaking north. Now, if the hurricane is slower, this northward turn might occur while the storm is still farther east. So you could imagine a faster storm might actually cross Florida before making that turn. But if this ridge is allowed to weaken and the hurricane hasn't gotten very far west, it might turn sooner, perhaps inland over the Florida Peninsula, which a lot of model solutions currently show. If we go out to Tuesday morning, we'll see that the hurricane on the European actually makes a little bit of a southwestern dive here. And you might ask, well, why is that? Well, it's because of this ridge that we talked about on the models. The European has it too. The GFS is a little weaker with it, but you get the same idea. Northeasterly flow at a different level. So there's competing steering flows for this hurricane, and the steering flows in general tend to be weak. Unfortunately, this means not only that there's greater uncertainty in the forecast, but that the storm is likely to slow down. Again, we're talking about a weakening ridge to the north of the storm. This means weak steering currents. There's no large-scale steering features, no giant trough digging in that's going to steer the storm quickly. So we may see a storm that kind of stalls or moves very slowly in the vicinity of the northern Bahamas and or southern or central Florida. This is obviously bad for a myriad of reasons: the exposure to high winds, the potential for prolonged storm surge, and inland rainfall that could cause flooding. It's not a good situation currently. It also means that a lot of areas could potentially be impacted. We're talking about the potential for a little dip southward. The system could impact as far as the southernmost parts of Florida, but then the storm could turn northward and impact the rest of the peninsula and even farther into the southeastern U.S., potentially even curving up the coastline into the Carolinas at some point, where surge and rainfall could become big issues for flooding. These are all areas that could see impacts from Dorian at varying times, with southern and central Florida being the first to see impacts for the U.S., the Bahamas, of course, before that, and then perhaps the rest of the southeast U.S. later. So really everyone needs to be preparing in this region from Florida northward for potential direct impacts from Dorian this weekend and next week. We do not know all of the details, but we do have pretty good agreement as of this evening that the storm is going to be right about here on Sunday morning. This is where most of the models have it right now, moving toward the northern Bahamas. So we've seen it a little bit slower. Landfall may be Monday or even Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on how slow the storm moves in this area here. We're going to find out, but we are running out of time to prepare, so folks should be preparing now for a major threat. This is the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center, again showing this bend back toward the west, ending up near the northern Bahamas on Sunday, as we talked about, and then you can see it really slows down. This is 2 p.m. Sunday, 2 p.m. Monday, 2 p.m. Tuesday. It really doesn't move that much in 2 days. And again, don't focus too much on the exact track shown here. Remember, the exact track has been kind of within a few areas of Florida during the last few forecasts from the National Hurricane Center, and that's because, again, we have this uncertainty, and this storm could meander rather slowly throughout this area and could end up impacting everybody depending on the track that it takes. If it dips south first and then comes up the peninsula, the entire state gets impacted. So don't focus too much on the exact landfall point. This is a significant threat that everyone should be preparing for, because we do not know all of the details yet. We're still a few days away from this, and there is some uncertainty, and things do change. Hurricanes can be unpredictable creatures. Unfortunately, right now there's high confidence of a major, very strong hurricane, currently expected to be Category 4, impacting Florida directly, and the Bahamas pretty likely as well. And then again, impacts could extend well inland. And remember, if the storm is moving slowly, it means there's a lot of flooding potential even well away from the coast, strong winds even well inland, given how powerful this storm is expected to be. Do prepare and start now. That's it for tonight. Thanks for watching.